Something shocking is happening in Nigeria right now, and Peter Obi is not keeping quiet about it. He just dropped a powerful message that everyone needs to hear. Former Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi has come out to strongly condemn the rising wave of insecurity in the country. He said Nigerians can no longer pretend that abductions and attacks are normal because every single day, more lives are being disrupted. His reaction came after a recent incident in Zamfara State where about 55 innocent people were reportedly taken away. But here's the irony. While some news reports were celebrating a so-called peace deal in Katsina, just a few miles away in Zamfara, fresh unrest was unfolding. Now listen to part of what Peter Obi posted on his official page. He wrote, "The reality of insecurity in today's Nigeria. While news headlines are still celebrating a purported peace deal in Katsina, we were again confronted with the another unfortunate reality that 55 of our fellow citizens were abducted in neighboring Zamfara State. This contradiction speaks to a disturbing truth that insecurity has become a normal everyday occurrence in Nigeria. But the big question now is if people can still be taken in Zamfara while leaders are celebrating peace in Katsina. Do you believe the government is truly serious about ending insecurity, or are we just going in circles while Nigerians continue to suffer?" Watch this video. I will be right back to say something on this.
Now, insecurity, armed bandits have abducted over 40 Muslim worshippers during early morning prayers at Gidantobe village mosque in Safe local government area of Zamfara State. According to community sources, the assailants struck around 5:30 a.m., surrounding the mosque before whisking away the worshippers at gunpoint. The captives were later taken into forests around the Gohori axis of Safe. The incident has thrown the community into panic, highlighting the fragility of ongoing peace initiatives in the northwest, where dialogue efforts with armed groups continue to face setbacks. Also, the abduction of the worshippers in Zamfara comes as local communities in Katsina State have reportedly entered into negotiation with armed groups, raising fears of a repeat of a sequence whereby the collapse of peace agreements led to renewed violence. According to reports, communities in Faskari local government area, one of the worst hit councils in Katsina State, opened talks with the bandits. The report says bandit representatives, including figures accused of leading raids and abductions like Kwashe Gawa, who is 19 on Nigeria's most wanted terrorist list, sat as community leaders at a gathering in Hayingada. The bandits reportedly agreed to halt attacks on villages, allow farmers safe passage and release abducted persons in exchange for freedom of movement and market access for Fulani and the development of their areas. All right, interesting news story this morning, Rufai. Negotiation with criminals, because that's who they are. And before then, I don't know if you would call it a celebration of the fact that month on month, year on year, inflation numbers seem to have gotten down. I think it's important to also mention that the NBS had said that as a result of the rebasing of the economy, we see the numbers on year inflation.
Definitely. So what is
your take on this story?
So what is happening with inflation is that last year there was a different base year that was used. This year there's a different base year. You cannot feel the full effect of what is happening with inflation until you go through a 1 year cycle. It's not a fair comparison using last year that had a different base year to inflation this year that had a different base year. So definitely you will always see a drop in the number. Also, inflation parameter baskets have changed. Weighted averages have moved more towards other areas. Like on this new parameter, the weighted average of food is lesser. So any uptick, you will see a reduction in food. It will take the expiration of this 1 year cycle after we now have inflation being calculated with this base year, then we now start comparing with the preceding year before we can have some resolution on the data. So we have something to compare. But today, what we are comparing with inflation is like apples and oranges actually. Because the last base year is different, and you're comparing 2 years that had different base year. Analytically, that will not give you good results. But I just hope that this signaling now of food prices dropping, the rate of increase of food prices dropping, will signal the central bank to now cut rates. Because businesses are grueling under high interest rates. Interest rates are up. What if interest rates are about 20-something%? What businesses take interest rates at in the bank when they go to the bank? When they add their own charges, it goes to over 30%. And it's uneasy for businesses to survive in this country. So when you look at it on that flip side, yes. So, but when you look at it, they say the rates are coming down. I do not see the rates coming down in the markets. Someday, the other day, they took videos and say, You can see the basket of this has dropped in Benue. The basket, that's not a fair parameter because you forget that Benue is a food hub. So the price at which is going to come in Benue, when you factor in the price of transportation and logistics, it's going to be different when it gets to Lagos. And in fact, I don't know about you, month on month, what I've spent on food has increased. So I've not seen a deceleration in out of my own pocket. So these are the parameters we need to look at strongly. But for those that want to celebrate and thump their fist in the air and say this is success, it's all well and good on the celebration. Let's say it pans out. Secondly, this is also coming at a time as regards removal of the free on board charge. I'm very happy about this because we spoke about it and they listened. In fact, we had the president, the chair of the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria come here to talk about how it was affecting their businesses and how this charge was adding extra monies to their businesses. So we're happy that the Minister of Finance have finally allowed cool heads prevail. So this will be able to help their business. I think they benchmarked the cost that it will cost their business about $1 trillion. And that's not nice for a manufacturing sector that's already lost about $1 trillion when we devalued our currency. It's not a good sight for them. The second story I'm going to talk about is the reaction by the presidency. And I think sometimes it's best the presidency just sit some things out if they don't have a concise reaction. There's nothing Atiku Abubakar said that was wrong to call for transparency if we're going to go ahead and divest. Some analysts have called for divestment. Yes, you can make the argument that we've not seen any need for the divestment or the government has not initiated any moves for divestment. But Atiku Abubakar said, if we want to do it, let us do it transparently. You know, because it is this same government that is so quick to cast aspersions at Atiku Abubakar by saying that, oh, the reason why he wants to sell the refinery is to his cronies and friends. So what his statement is just saying that in the bid where we're going to divest from some of our oil assets, let's do it with transparency. Then the next thing the government comes out and says, you don't see the achievement we've done in the last 2 years. I mean, there's a mismatch in both statements.
Well, he did also highlight the sufferings of the Nigerian people.
Yes,
so,
he highlighted the sufferings of the Nigerian people, which are palpable. Which are palpable. Are people not suffering? Is the currency not being devalued? Are lives not worse off? Is the World Bank not saying that more people are slipping into sufferings? So it's a mismatch as regards what is on ground. So you reacting and saying you don't see what the government has done in 2 years and all of that, it's a mismatch because you have not eradicated the sufferings of people. Yes, inflation has come down because we changed base year. At its peak, it was over 34% with the last base year iteration. Yes, you say, okay, we have capital importation at this point in time. Yes, so our balance of deficit is increasing. Yes. Then you now go further to say, oh, we are already doing more. People are buying on the stock market. Is the stock market a reflection of human beings on the street? Is there a difference between Broad Street and Main Street? And why are people going into the stock market? People are going to the stock market because the government is crowding out the ecosystem in bonds. So a lot of people are looking at market instruments to go to. So is that a reflection of the person suffering in Oyigbo markets? So I think it is even the government that doesn't understand the distinction between people suffering. We are talking about, you have not seen what we have done in 2 years. Look at insecurity. Is it not a reflection of a failure of the government that people are now going to negotiate with bandits? And despite that, bandits are still attacking them. But Mr. Bayo Onanuga fails to realize that it prevails over a government. You can hear a bandit attack in Zamfara State. Did you hear that you had a military push as regards it? No, because it doesn't concern them. But in a local government of 5 polling units, you have battalions of soldiers go there and NSCDC officials. So you can see what the government has been doing in 2 years, where over 40 people abducted. Abduction of people is not like pure water in the country. You can see what the government has been doing in 2 years. Bandits have the nerve now to sit down with people and negotiate peace deals. You can see what the government has been doing in 2 years. Yes, Nel Fund. Okay, yes, we applaud Nel Fund. What else? Oh, the president promised they are going to deploy tractors from Belarus that they've bought already, that his friend, his schoolmate. Dr. Batia, those tractors been deployed already. Weren't you the one complaining the other day that after buying the tractor, they've not been deployed? Have we seen an upsurge in agricultural production? You can see all the promises he made after subsidy. President Tinubu celebrated that the refinery is already working. His back is working. Is the NNPC refinery working today? Have they given us our $3 billion? What are they telling us now? You have to, Ojulari was speaking the other day. You have said you have to look for 60 billion extra for expansion. So let's stop talking like things are not happening in this country.
All right.
Oh, you can see what's happening. A state of emergency was declared. Till today, the Supreme Court didn't hear that case.
2 more days to the end of that.
Shall I continue?
No,
you can.
okay.
I should not continue. Okay.
Your take on
Okay, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics says inflation has dropped by to 20.12% year on year. Food inflation has gone down. Core inflation, which is the measurement without agricultural products, has also gone down. Now, I think what you should warn against is playing politics with statistics. The explanation that they have given is that, oh, this is due to rebasing. Now, rebasing is a statistical term. Where is the connection with the lives of the people in real terms? What the people themselves can see, what they can refer to as felt lived experience. Because inflation dropping, stabilizing, cannot be an abstraction. The central bank governor says, oh, this is as a result of the fact that things are stabilizing within the economy, and that in fact inflation is in the next few months likely to drop even further, having dropped for 5 consecutive months. Now, all of that would look like abstraction to the average Nigerian. Where I think the missing link is that when they talk about food inflation, ordinarily, perennially, historically, we're in the harvest season. August, September, October, that's the harvest season. So the prices of food items in the market would naturally come down. But you see, that food inflation could drop further if farmers are able to go to their farms. In other words, the government needs to pay more attention to security of the farmlands. In many parts of the country, the farmers within the food belt of Nigeria, they cannot go to the farms. Not enough is being done within the agricultural value chain. In other words, what are we celebrating when we have not yet addressed the basic fundamentals? If they say core inflation, again, you look at that core inflation segment of the calculations, there are a lot of contradictions that are there. Cost of energy is flip-flopping. Cost of electricity is going up and down. Transportation is on the high side. So which Nigerian can say that many of these indicators have been properly addressed? Instead, what we get month after month, are reports that, inflation is moderating. If inflation is moderating, if inflation is dropping, it's not something that should be an abstraction. It should not be something that is politicized. The people who go to the market, the people who travel on the roads, they will see it and they will proclaim it and they will confirm it that this indeed is the truth. Household expenditures have not improved. And in many households, the story remains one of complaint and agony. It's an area that the federal government needs to focus upon and to move from, statistical diplomacy to concrete achievements with direct impact on the lives of the people. Now, as for Atiku Abubakar, the Waziri Adamawa, saying that he is concerned about the attempt to review the PIA, that's the Petroleum Industry Act, and also to sell Nigeria's stake in some of the joint ventures. All that I read in the papers about former Vice President Atiku was him calling for transparency and accountability, and making sure that Nigeria's sovereign interest is protected. Now, at the level of principle, that is incontrovertible. You cannot argue with him. Are you going to argue against his request for transparency, sovereign interest, long-term interest of the Nigerian entity? And he raises that point with regard to the joint ventures, particularly our joint ventures with Renaissance Energy, with Oando, and I think there's another company, Seplat. Now, the Nigerian government has these joint ventures, but we often underperform. We don't pay our own cash call requirements. It's your partners that will say, oh, we have filled the gap for you. And then they will add charges on it. And at the end of the day, the Nigerian government will lose even more money because we don't perform. We don't service our own part of the JV calls. So if privatization is the way to go, in principle, privatization is not the problem. And that is why Waziri Adamawa Atiku Abubakar was saying, well, he believes in trade liberalization, privatization, after all, as Vice President of Nigeria. He was the chair of the National Council on Privatization. But I'm not talking about National Council of Privatization in this guy. I'm saying that, look, privatization could help. But what is important is this transparency, integrity, and accountability. Now, how do you do it if you say you are divesting? Who manages that divestment? Will it be the Bureau of Public Enterprises or some other fictional mongrel of a structure that would be asked to do it? That's why Nigerians have every reason to be concerned. Now to the three entities that Waziri Adamawa mentioned. Renaissance Energy. Now, Nigeria, I think, has about 55% equity in Renaissance Energy. They say they are going to sell about 35%. They will retain maybe 20%. That 35% is going to be sold to an Indian energy company. Who is behind that Indian energy company? We have 60% in Oando. Now, out of the 60% in Oando, we're going to divest about 25%. That 25% will be sold to Oando. We have, I think, also 60% in Seplat. Now, the federal government is proposing to divest to the tune of about 35%. Now, the Nigerian government says, or, you know, those who are concerned, they are saying that that divestment, that equity will be sold to Shaguri and Chaguri, or a group that is associated with Shaguri and Chaguri. Can anyone just see why a body like the Committee of Patriots are saying that, look, there's something suspicious about this? And it's the same argument that other commentators on the subject have brought forward by saying the plan to amend the Petroleum Industry Act is also backed by personal interest of the persons who want to do this. Section 6, 85, 59, 56 of that PIA. Where I do not agree with those who argue against that amendment is that they're saying, oh, it is too early to amend the Petroleum Industry Act. Now, any piece of legislation is a living object. People can always review it, they can always amend it. After all, when the PIA itself was passed, the major concern at that time was that there was a problem, that there were problems with certain sections that needed to be amended. If the Tinubu administration says the time has now come for that amendment, I think they cannot say, oh, the time is not right. But their argument of those who are opposing it, that personal interest should not, you know, be the major priority, I think is on all fours with the position of the Waziri Adamawa, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. Finally, I've always made the point that this negotiation with bandits, with terrorists, they say in Katsina they are holding meetings with terrorists. No. The basic position is that terrorists, bandits, insurgents are criminals. They tried this negotiation thing, you know, previously under the Buhari administration. It did not work. Because the whole idea of rehabilitation and negotiation amounted to a cop-out against the Nigerian people by the Nigerian government at that time. And now we have praised the Tinubu administration in terms of the arrest, the prosecution of the Emir Ansaru, or whatever he calls himself, and his chief of staff, Mahmouda, and their sentencing on one of the 32-count charges. That, look, it looks like the Tinubu administration is not ready to prepare jollof rice or, you know, engage in this illusion that criminals can be rehabilitated. Now, if that is what they are trying to do in Katsina State, it is wrong. Persons who have been identified as rank and file criminals, criminals of the first rank, should be subjected to the full wrath of the law. Sitting down and negotiating with criminals, either at the community level or at the government level, is unacceptable, and it runs against the grain of previous protestations by the Tinubu administration that any criminal, any bandit, any insurgent will be labeled appropriately as a criminal and dealt with accordingly.
Absolutely, labeled as a criminal. I think it's for us in Nigeria, we need to define what we term as criminal activity and who we see to be criminals. Do we consider bandits as criminals? Like Dr. Bati mentioned, we've explored this route of kinetic and non-kinetic, and as part of the moves for non-kinetic approach to addressing security challenges in the country, some states in the Northwest had resorted to negotiating with these bandits whom some people would refer to as criminals, and criminals in the sense that they are architects of violence, kidnapping, cattle rustling, I don't know what else, under which other term would call them, if not criminals, who ought to face the law. But it's okay, you know what, they might have some things that they are aggrieved about. Let's bring them to the negotiation table, since we've been on this path of war with them for many, many years, and perhaps this will bring about peace. Now, on August 28th, of this year, it was said that a peace agreement had been reached with some of these bandits, and they said it wasn't the government that was spearheading this peace agreement. It was community-led. So some spiritual leaders, some community leaders came together, and they actually had a sit down with bandits in Nigeria to negotiate. As we would imagine, less than a month following that peace agreement, we've now seen this attack on the Zamfara community, which happened yesterday, and where they kidnapped about 40 people during prayers in the mosque. This also reflects in Katsina State as well, where we've seen bandits still attack. So what happened to the peace pact? It shows, as it failed during Governor Bello Masari's time, when it failed at that time, that peace agreements or peace pacts do not work. When are we going to acknowledge this and actually treat the situation as it ought to be? Like Dr. Bati describes it, and I totally agree. It seems like a cop-out, because they've not been able to push back on terrorist activities in the Northwest. So the next thing is to then, okay, you know what, let's talk to them. What do you want to negotiate about? What they say, oh, in major wars, people come to negotiation table. Even World War I, World War II ended through negotiation and agreement. But the people should have something they're holding on to. What is the claim of the bandits, aside from the fact that they are involved in criminal activities? I center on security today because it ties in, or it links to a number of the stories or headline stories for this morning. When we look at the state of the economy that former Vice President Atiku Abubakar spoke about, he did talk about the fact that when we have a state of poverty and lack in the economy in the country, it would lead to young people and even older people involving themselves in a life of crime and criminal activity. So he talked about the increase in advanced free fraud, increase in even protestations, as we've seen in other parts of the world. He talked about the fact that if the Tinubu administration is not serious about looking after the economy, then we might find ourselves dealing with even bigger issues. And so that is why we have to be serious about security. Hence the reason why we applauded the efforts of security agencies in prosecuting criminals as they are, and we saw the sentencing as we talked about last week. So to now begin to see negotiations and even the audacity to go back to the negotiation table again following the breakdown of the peace pact beggars belief. I believe that the Northwest is serious, and you know, the Zamfara governor has said it before, that the bandits are people that they know. They are people that they understand their operation, and if given the apparatus, he'll be able to tackle this in 2 weeks. Give him the apparatus, let him work it out, because the people have suffered for too long under the siege of these bandits for us to be handling the matter of security with child's play. We have a bigger time bomb on our hands if we don't deal with that. And that again feeds to the inflation numbers we're talking about. And you know, Vice President Atiku Abubakar describes it as voodoo economics. You can understand why, because they are playing permutations and, you know, just jiggling or rejiggling numbers to make the figures look good. But as we've talked about, if it does not reflect in the realities, in the reality for the Nigerian people, then it is just, they're just numbers. And so we keep celebrating and talking about, okay, year on year. We cannot talk about year on year if we're looking at it from the lens of different base years. And so it's difficult to describe as success or improvement or a fall in inflation numbers when the base years are totally different. We've talked about the fact that food inflation will continue to rise if we don't tackle or look at the issue of security, if the farmers cannot go to the farm. And that's why I tie it again all back to security. This administration under the Tinubu, or under President Ahmed Tinubu, had said that they were going to double down on security and ensure that farmers would be able to go back to their farms. Unfortunately, this is not the reality as we speak. And so beyond the rhetorics, beyond giving them nice outfits when they have killed and maimed and disturbed economic activities for so long, let us show seriousness towards criminals and criminality, and actually go after them in the way that we ought to, and not sit down with them and have negotiations that will not bear any fruit at all. Because at the end of the day, what are they really fighting for? What is their cause, aside from the fact that it is just an opportunity to take advantage of the people and a weak security architecture?
This is a very strong message from Obi. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel so more people can join this important conversation.